Welcome. It's the spring of 1903, and across two very different cities, the future of baseball is taking shape. In Boston, fans line up outside Huntington Avenue grounds. The wooden turnstiles creak as people pay their 50 cents for admission. It's about $15 in today's money. The weather is pleasant. Some clutch scorecards, others just want a good view from the rope that marks the outfield boundary. They'll have to contend with the shed in center field that's sometimes in play. The smell of cigars mixes with damp spring grass, and excitement buzzes throughout the crowd. The Americans are about to take on the Athletics. 4 days earlier, and nearly 500 miles west, another crowd jammed into Cincinnati's brand new Palace of the Fans. This ornate ballpark, with its Corinthian columns and grandstands, looked more like a theater than a ball field. 12,000 spectators bundled against the chill, eager to see the season's first pitch. The Pirates are about to face the Reds. Two different ballparks, two different leagues, and yet, by October, the teams that took those fields, the Boston Americans and the Pittsburgh Pirates, would find themselves on a collision course in something baseball had never seen before, a postseason series to decide it all. This is the story of the 1903 Boston Americans and Pittsburgh Pirates, the first two pennant winners to ever clash in the World Series. Welcome to the Road to October. I'm your host, Ryan Lorenz. Professional baseball in 1903 was at a crossroads. The National League, founded in 1876, was the established giant. Its owners saw themselves as the guardians of the sport, the only league that mattered. Its teams included Pittsburgh, New York, Chicago, Cincinnati, Brooklyn, Boston, Philadelphia, and St. Louis. But the American League, created in 1901, was the upstart. Branded by the press as a rebel league, it wasn't afraid to poach National League players with better salary and the promise of stability. Fans flocked to the new teams. By 1903, the American League had earned the grudging respect of the others. The teams of the American League included Philadelphia, Cleveland, New York, Detroit, St. Louis, Chicago, and Washington. Still, the relationship between the leagues was bitter. Owners accused each other of stealing players, fans debated which league had the stronger talent, and nobody could agree on which circuit really produced the better champion. That year, for the first time, the two sides tried something different. The pennant winners of each league would face off in a best-of-9 exhibition series, a gamble. Nobody knew if the fans would care or if the owners would even split the money fairly, but it set the stage for something historic. Now let's meet both the teams. The Boston Americans, just 3 years old, were managed by Jimmy Collins. Collins wasn't just the skipper, he was also their everyday third baseman. Steady and dependable, the captain in every sense. He had been with the team since their founding. Their home, the Huntington Avenue grounds, had been built in only 6 weeks and at a cost of just $35,000. It wasn't Fenway Park. Fenway wouldn't exist for another 9 years. Instead, this ballpark came with its quirks: a pond in left field, a dangerous slope in center, and a reputation for rough, uneven surfaces. The ballpark was built in an open area near railroad tracks on land that was often used for carnivals and traveling circuses. A Boston Globe reporter once described it in this way: "The grounds are neither fair nor foul, but more like a pasture field hastily pressed into service." Now let's meet some of the players on the team. Behind the plate was Lou Krieger, steady, if not spectacular, known more for his glove than his bat. At first base, George LeChance, a dependable veteran who would finish the season leading the team in fielding percentage. At second base, Hobe Ferris. At shortstop, Freddie Pennant. Pennant wasn't a household name, but he was the Americans' quiet anchor. He led both the team and the league in defensive WAR, and by the end of the season, he'd also post the highest WAR of any position player on the team. At third was Collins himself, the steady captain, and in the outfield, 3 men who defined Boston's offense. Patsy Doherty, who would lead the league in runs and hits while swiping a team-best 35 bases. Buck Freeman, the slugger. He led the league in homers with 13 and drove in 104 runs, a staggering number for the dead ball era. Lastly, Chick Stahl, reliable veteran who rounded out the trio. But the true heart of this team, its pitching staff. Cy Young, at age 36, was already a legend. He would win 28 games, throw 34 complete games, and rack up over 340 innings. We'll do a deeper dive on Cy Young in a later episode and provide more of a biography for him. But at this time, just know, he's one of the best pitchers in the league and will eventually have an award named after him. Alongside him was Bill Dineen, who matched Young in wins above replacement and would become a postseason hero. Behind them, young arms like Tom Hughes, Norwood Gibson, George Winter, and Nick Altrock gave Boston depth few others could match. The season for Boston began with a doubleheader against the Philadelphia Athletics, managed by Hall of Famer Connie Mack. Game 1 was a duel between George Winter and Rube Waddell. Waddell was as dominant as he was eccentric. He struck out 6 in the first 3 innings, but Boston broke through in the 4th, stringing together singles and walks to rattle the Athletics' ace. By the end, the Americans had scored 9 runs, and Winter even helped his own cause with a double and an RBI. Boston took it 9-4. Game 2, however, was a much different story. Cy Young took the mound against Eddie Plank. For 5 innings, Cy Young was untouchable. He had a no-hitter in progress, but in the 7th, the wheels came off. Philadelphia struck for 6 runs to tie the game, and when Tom Hughes came in from the bullpen, the Athletics piled on 4 more runs. Boston's bats fought back, but it wasn't enough. The Americans dropped the second game 10-7. It was the start of a 3-game losing streak for the team, their longest of the year. From there, the Americans settled into their rhythm. On May 22nd, they were 3.5 games back in the standings, their low point, but then came the surge. Between May 28th and June 8th, Boston rattled off an 11-game winning streak, powered by Dougherty's speed and Freeman's thunderous bat. However, on June 26th, Boston would find themselves a game behind Philadelphia in the standings, when Buck Freeman hit for the cycle in Cleveland, the first in franchise history. A Boston Herald headline praised him. Freeman bats like a demon, Cleveland pitchers utterly helpless before his mighty swing. Then, just 2 days later, the Americans would regain the American League lead. From then on, the Americans never looked back. By September, they had stretched their division lead to an astounding 15.5 games. The regular season for Boston ended as it had begun, with a doubleheader, this time against the St. Louis Browns. Game 1 was a slugfest. Norwood Gibson went the distance for Boston, giving up 7 runs, but his teammates backed him with 8, including 3 in the very first inning. Boston held on to win 8-7. Game 2 was pure dominance. Bill Dineen, the workhorse, threw one of the team's 20 shutouts that season. 9 innings, 7 hits, 5 strikeouts. Boston cruised 6-0 as over 2,600 fans cheered their new champions. With the final game of the season completed, the Americans hit a record of 91, 47-3. Yes, there were ties during this era of baseball, capturing the American League pennant in convincing fashion. If Boston represented new blood, the Pittsburgh Pirates were the old guard. Founded in 1882, the Pirates are seasoned, respected, and well-managed. Their leader, Fred Clark, was another player-manager, patrolling left field while orchestrating lineups and strategy. Known for his sharp baseball mind, Clark would finish his career as the winningest manager in Pittsburgh history. Their home, Exposition Park 3. Perched on the north shore of the Allegheny River. Today, it would be located somewhere between where the Pirates and the Steelers play their home games. It's a charming little ballpark, 10,000 seats, river views, but it's also prone to flooding. One of the previous exposition parks was completely destroyed by the river flooding. In fact, sometimes the river spills into the outfield. A ball hit into the water, that's an automatic single. As a Pittsburgh press dryly noted, the Allegheny is proving as tricky an outfielder as any man in uniform. Now let's meet some of the men who carried Pittsburgh through that 141-game season. Behind the plate, Ed Phelps, a catcher with a rifle arm who threw out more than half of the would-be base stealers. At first, Kitty Bransfield, the club's sure-handed fielder. Second base, Claude Ritchie, who led the team in walks. Shortstop, none other than Onus Wagner, the Flying Dutchman, arguably the best player in baseball at this time. Wagner led the team and the league in wins above replacement, triples, batting average, RBIs, and stolen bases. At third base, Tommy Leach. In the outfield, you've got Ginger Beaumont, the league leader in hits and even home runs, plus Jimmy Sebring, and of course Clark himself, who topped the league in doubles. On the mound, a rotation headlined by Deacon Felipe and Sam Lever. Lever was lights out in 1903, leading the league in ERA and shutouts, leading the team in wins, and pacing everyone in pitcher war. They're joined by Ed Doney, Rickyard Kennedy, and Irving Wilhelm. This team was built to win, and win they did. The 1903 season started out for Pittsburgh on Thursday, April 16th. They started the season in Cincinnati, Ohio. 12,000 fans were in attendance to watch the Pirates take on the Reds. Deacon Felipe faced off against Jack Harper. Both pitched the full 9 innings. However, Felipe dominated the Reds batters, striking out 5 and allowing only 2 hits and 1 run off an errant throw. Harper did not fare as well due to his inability to control the ball on this day, allowing 11 hits, 7 runs, and walking 8 batters. During the game, Onus Wagner made a fantastic play when he jumped into the air to catch a line drive. Wagner also provided help on offense with 2 hits and an RBI and a stolen base. Player manager Fred Clark also helped the team with 2 hits, 2 RBIs, and a stolen base. Pirates cruised to victory 7-1. This win would be their first of a 4-game winning streak, and would see that the Pirates were never under 500 for the duration of the season. This, however, would not be their longest winning streak for the Pirates, which would top out at 15 games from June 2nd through June 25th. During a series against the Phillies that began on August 27th, the game had to be moved to a different stadium due to the bleachers collapsing. The games were played at the athletic stadiums and would be the beginning of a 14-game win streak for the Pirates. The Pirates at one point in the season would see themselves as low as third in the standings. However, they spent 91 games in first place out of the 141 games they played. Finally, on September 26th, they closed out the season at Exposition Park against the New York Giants. Brickyard Kennedy faced off against Hall of Famer Joe McGinty, the Iron Man of the era. McGinty wasn't sharp, surrendering 10 hits but limited Pittsburgh to a single run. Kennedy allowed 8 hits and 4 runs, with stars like Onus Wagner and Fred Clark resting on the bench. The Pirates dropped the finale, but it didn't matter. Pittsburgh finished with a record of 91, 49, and 1, 6.5 games clear of the Giants. They were the class of the National League and now looking to face their opponent in the newly founded World Series, the Boston Americans. As one Pittsburgh paper declared, the Pirates are kings of the diamond, unyielding in spirit, unmatched in skill. 2 teams, 2 champions, 2 leagues. On one side, the Boston Americans, young, unproven, hungry, led by Cy Young's golden arm, Buck Freeman's bat, a team that embodied the scrappy spirit of the American League. On the other, the Pittsburgh Pirates, confident, established, led by Onus Wagner, the game's greatest star, and Fred Clark's leadership, a club that represented the might of the National League. The question was simple but explosive. Which league really played the better brand of baseball? Before we can walk inning by inning, game by game through the 1903 World Series, we're going to take a slight detour and learn a little bit more about Huntington Avenue grounds and Jimmy Collins. The 1903 World Series matchup is filled with drama, controversy, legendary performances, the very first fall classic, and it would change the sport forever. Thank you for listening to The Road to October.